Hello everybody, this is Georgiana with Expressions Craft Studio. Welcome back. This week we are going to be working on cards for week 10 for Project Christmas Cheer 2023. These cards go to benefit both the Angel Card Project and Cards for Soldiers. And today we are going to use our Cricut to create a card front. The card that I'm going to case or redesign or whatever is actually from Karen Titus with stampingonthebackporch.com, and she is a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and I believe a lot of other people have done this card as well, but she's the one who I watched do it. And so we're going to just recreate this card here, and we're going to do it using this technique with the circles, but we're going to recreate them in Cricut. So let's move over to our Cricut workspace and we'll go from there. And I'm going to select this half circle tool or shape. And I want it laying on its side just because that's a little easier for me, so I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. I want it 2.5 inches wide, which it is. It says high, but that's because we rotated it. And then I'm going to duplicate that. And I want this one to be 2 inches high. And then I'm going to duplicate that. And I want it to be 1.5. And then I'm going to highlight all of them. I'm going to align them on the bottom. And then I'm going to align them to the right. There we go. Now, we'll go back and change the colors because, you know, I do not like this dark gray. I don't know why, but I don't. Maybe it's because it's hard for me to see. Do that one the lightest. So there you have one set of half circles. And we're going to group those together. Then we're going to duplicate it. And we're going to flip this one. And then flip it vertically. And then when you line them up, you see how they fit together. Now, I suppose you wouldn't have to cut this smaller circle or use a half a circle. But then you're going to maybe run into problems when you go to glue it together. So I think it's just easier to use the 2 halves. We will see. So anyway, let's see what our total dimension on that is. And it is then 3.5, 3.5 inches wide. And our card will be 5.25. So we could make this a little bit bigger. Let's go up, or actually the card width will be 5.5. So let's make this 4.5. There we go. Okay, and now since I enlarged it, I can see it's not quite centered. It's pretty close though. It doesn't need to be. It's just, you know, for a visual. So there we go. There we have it. And that's what we're going to cut out on our Cricut. So let's grab some paper. And I'll show you what we're going to be working with. All right, do you guys remember this paper pad? This is from, I believe it's week 1. Could have been week 2. But we've still got some paper in here, so let's see if we can pick out some papers. Now this would be pretty, except it's on, probably going to be on a white card base. So maybe we want to use some of this here in the background, this gray. These are just some scraps we had that are left over. We might want to use one of those. This would actually be nice too, especially for a bigger circle. And either this or perhaps this, because we do want to get some contrast. So we do have some options here. Let me see what else we have in our book or our paper pad. So we don't want the sentiments here. Have a, let's see, light gray with snowflakes. Nothing to write home about. Now this is pretty. That would look nice. We just want to make sure we get some contrast. Most of it's just really kind of bland gray. Now this, I haven't really liked this sheet, so I've tended to use the back more. But I think this might be good for this particular card. So I'm going to pull this one out. I do think this one will look nice. Sorry, I'm bumping the camera. I do think this one will look nice, so we'll use that. So, slowly working our way through this pad of paper here. So let's bring back over what we've got here. And try and get a visual here. So I do like that silver as maybe the back to the larger circle. And then we could maybe do something like that, or is that too much? That might be too much foil. Yeah, we don't want that side for sure. So if we did that, maybe then we'd go with this. Or maybe we need the darker blue, since that's pretty similar. Well, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to cut out a bunch of circles in different sizes from different papers, and then we'll play with them. So I'm going to load up my mat and start cutting, and we'll be back to see what we come up with. Alright, so I finished cutting out from 6 different full-size sheets enough half circles for 3 cards from each sheet. So we're going to be able to kind of mix and match like we did in that first couple of weeks where we kind of flipped and switched and all of that. But now I need to work with much smaller pieces that are only 3 1/4 by 12. So I'm adjusting my layers here, or my number of cuts, and let's go into Make It and see if we can get those to fit the way we want them to. So we're definitely going to have to do some rearranging. So I'm going to turn this one, turn it up, and I've found that if I nest them in opposite directions, I can get them closer together. So that's what I'm doing here. Like I said, this does take you a little bit more time, but you can do a better job if you're kind of good with puzzles than Cricut does when it comes to rearranging or laying out the mat. Yeah, I apologize. I'm going to get that several more times. I don't know how to turn that off. It's not a Cricut feature, it's a computer feature, and I keep releasing my shift key a little too soon. So you see, I'm just going in and manually placing all of these, and it's still going to be close. So I think what I'll do is I will just turn a couple of these off so that they don't cut. And I'll need to do that with all 3 sizes. If there is a way to do them all at once, I am not aware of it. Okay, so now I'll set this one up here, and this one over here, and I'm going to go slide that guy right in there. And again, I'm just trying to get the most mileage possible out of my paper. Alright, so that goes down to, it doesn't go all the way down to 3, so that should be good. So we're going to continue. I'm going to select a medium cardstock. And I'm going to load my Cricut. And I'll do that for these 2 sheets, and then we'll be back. But you can see how much cardstock I was able to save. Instead of it using the whole sheet, I was able to save half a sheet. So I guess we'll be making even more cards with this paper pad, and I still have a whole one that I haven't even touched yet. So that's interesting. But yeah, we're doing our best to conserve our consumables here. So the other thing that I ended up doing that I found really useful for these cards was I ended up making a template, because as you can see, I wasn't really sure how to position these 2 pieces onto the card or card base or the background piece. So the template ended up coming in really handy, and it really helped me a lot to get everything kind of straight and positioned properly so that I wasn't constantly struggling to line things up. Now later I will pull out my T-ruler, and if I had thought of that sooner, I probably could have done it without the template using that, but I didn't think of that until I was nearly done. So because this week's cards took me so long, I got a little behind because of some other things that were going on. So I'm actually combining week 10 and 11. I feel like having completed 25 cards with this week, it's okay if I go ahead and combine them. And I hope that that's, nobody minds too much about that. But I'm way ahead on the cards that I need, that for the goal that I had set for myself. So I'm not worried about that. It's just I'd hope to make, basically 1 card per day, so 7 cards a week. But I've been making them in much larger batches, and I actually am really happy with the way most of these turned out. So I'm just going to combine the 2 weeks, and then hopefully I can get back on track. But I'm going to show you how I attach everything and line it up. So initially here, as I'm trying to line up my background piece here, I realize that something's not quite straight, and it's the card base is a little bit off. So I'm going to go to my guillotine cutter and trim that down a little bit. And then I think because sometimes embossing folders can distort your paper, I think that's probably what happened. Even though I did spray it with water before I embossed it, I think it kind of adjusted the size of my paper a little bit. So I'm not quite happy with the way it lined up, but it's still pretty good. It's just me being picky. So it looks like it's a little bit more square. It's still off a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and glue it down. Kind of line it up where I want it and hold it in place, and then I'll glue it down. Now I'm going to slide it around a little bit just to get the best possible alignment for it. And of course it's wanting to slide in opposite direction of where I want it to go. So I'm going to press this down, use my stamp block to help apply a little bit of extra pressure. So when I was cutting my backgrounds, I used, 5 or 6 different background ideas, and probably just as many different colors of blue cardstock, because I wasn't sure exactly. I didn't want all the cards to be the same. I wanted them all to be a little bit different, and I wanted to have different combinations. So I just pulled some samples of quarter sheets of cardstock out of my stash here, and I just went to the blue section and pulled a bunch of blues out of there. And that's what I use to make all of my background pieces. Most of those are the Recollections cardstock, the 65 pound, and so they're not really heavy enough for a card base, but they're really nice layering weight. And the color is all the way through, so they don't have a white core, they're a solid core cardstock, which is also nice. So I'm going to glue down this other half or other side of this and apply a little bit of pressure. And then I will pick up my template here and line it up and clip it in place so that I can apply the circle pieces or half circle pieces. I will include this template in the files that I upload to my Expressions Craft Studio group page. So you will have to join the group to get them, but it's not hard. You just fill out answer a couple questions. Mostly they're, will you be civil and nice to each other, and then you can get the free files. So I just do a double check to make sure I've got the right pieces, because I did glue some together that weren't quite correct. These probably aren't the best clips for this because they don't lay flat, but they worked all right for me. And I try not to glue all the way out to the edge, just because the template is such a tight fit, a snug fit, that I don't want to end up gluing it down accidentally to the card. So what I'll do is I don't go all the way to the edge, and then I just kind of lightly peel that up away so that it doesn't end up stuck underneath there. And I'll do the same thing on the second piece when I glue it down. So I will adjust the sizing on the template, and I will make those half circles just a hair bigger. Because even if you get your smaller circles lined up properly, it really is a snug fit. And I think that it would be helpful, if you're going to make a lot of them, to just have it to be a little bit looser, so it's not quite such a snug fit. So now I'm going to cut my strip of dimensional tape, and I will attach a sentiment. I've got a bunch of different ones that I created in Word, but I will share that file as well. But if you don't use Word, if you use something else, you want to just retype them in whatever product you're using, that's fine. What I did was I printed them out. I created the file in Word, I printed it out, and then because I added an outline to each word, I ran it through my scan and cut them out that way. There's a variety of different ways you can do this. Cricut will cut them out. Cricut will even write the sentiments out for you. I just like the cleaner look of a printed font rather than the way the Cricut writes them out. So I apologize for getting my head in the way here. I'm just trying to line this up as straight as possible. You can see my thinning hair though. I used to have a beautiful lush set of hair. Not anymore. Aging is not for the faint of heart, let me tell you. So what I'm doing is I'm using the T-ruler here, lining up the edge of the card with the bottom of the tape, and then I'm just sliding the ruler down just a little bit because I don't want the tape at the very bottom of the sentiment strip. I don't want you to be able to see it. I kind of want it a little bit more hidden than that. So, and then I can still use the ruler to line up the edge of the strip, and I get a pretty nice straight application right there, and I'm pretty happy with that. I always check to make sure I didn't do it backwards, because I have. Of course, it's a little late to check after I've glued everything down. The irony of that's not lost on me. I really like the background on this one. Now I've gone ahead and glued that down just because it's a little bit more intricate and a little bit more difficult to glue down, but it's so, so pretty. So again, I'm just going to grab my template and I'm going to center it as best I can. My background pieces were all different sizes. Some of them were 5 1/4 by 4, and some of them were 4 3/4 by 3 3/4, or no, 5 by 3. I don't have the measurements right, but anyway, they were different sizes. So sometimes the template lined up better, like completely accurately over it and the background piece, and sometimes it was a little smaller. But in the end, I was able to make it work. I believe this cardstock that I'm using here for the card base is, in fact, like a pearlescent cardstock. So it's got a slicker surface, so it is a little bit harder to glue on. It takes a little bit longer for the glue to dry and to become permanent. And that's just something to keep in mind. So now I'm just removing the clips and the template and pressing the pieces down a little bit to make sure I get a good adhesion, and add that block just to add a little bit of extra weight. So my template held up pretty well. I got 25 cards made out of it. Probably could have done another 25, but it held up pretty well, so I'm really happy that I did it that way. And some of the sentiments don't really show up well on the camera, but I think that one says Peace on Earth. So I'm just trying to choose one. I have several others, but these were the ones I set aside. I think I'm going to go with the bolder one. It's a little bit easier to read, and since a lot of these will be going to elderly people, I want them to be able to read them. And here again, I'm showing you the larger ones that came out. I just really struggle with visualizing sizes, and they just were bigger than I wanted. I ended up using a couple of them, and they do look okay, but they're just a lot bigger than I wanted. I didn't want something that took away from the design of the card. So now I'm just going to attach my thin strip of tape here, dimensional tape. Oh, my cat needed to go out. She was done sunning herself in the window, so she was waiting patiently by the door. So I'll go back and I will add the finishing touches to those two cards. And actually, looks like I'm going to go ahead and do that here. A lot of the trees or a lot of the cards I ended up using bells that I had pre-cut last year. And because the dimensional tape is almost as wide as the sentiment, it didn't leave a lot of room to slide that bell underneath there. And you can kind of see the ring that would hold the bell up. So it just kind of looks like it's just suspended in nothingness. So I just slid it up underneath the sentiment as good as I could, and then I just ran my fingernail across the edge of the sentiment strip and the bell, and it made just enough of an impression that I was kind of able to figure out where to cut it and what angle to cut it on, so that I could get it to nestle up underneath there just a little bit better, so it didn't look like it was just kind of hanging out in space. If I'd been thinking about it and prepared better, I would have glued that bell down before I put the sentiment strip down. looking for my tweezers. Ended up finding another pair. I like to use tweezers for some of this stuff just because it keeps the glue on the die cut and off of my fingers a little bit better, especially for these really intricate and small, fine detail pieces. For me, it's hard to hang on to them and not get glue all over me. These would have looked nice with some ribbon on them, and I did have some ribbon that I wanted to use, but then I got busy gluing things down and just forgot about the ribbon. So I'll pull out some of my snowflakes and finish embellishing these, and then I will put the sentiments inside of all of them, my stickers on the back, and they will be ready to go for the coming up Christmas. And so if you haven't been following along, these cards are all for the Christmas card project, angel card project, I should say. So we're going to do a quick slideshow here. But these are for the angel card project as well as for cards for soldiers. So I did use some of my Nuvo drops as well as, rhinestones on these cards, along with the snowflakes I'd already cut out and the bells that I'd already cut out. Some of the cards I like a lot better than others. They're all just a little bit different. I decided that my favorites were the ones with the high contrast. Like this one coming up. I love this one. I love the contrast on this one. But I also love this one. The background on here, I feel like it just really makes it. And this is the big tag. You can see how different that looks. It's so much larger than the narrow strips. It doesn't look bad. I just really wanted the narrow strips. Now this one, it really could use a little bit something else. I don't know what, but to me it's the least, one of my least favorites for sure. I really like the embossed backgrounds on these as well as the die cut backgrounds. This again, it's kind of a plain die cut background, but it's better than the oval. The oval just didn't do it for me when all was said and done. Now this one was my favorite and I love this background, but it was a pain to cut. I ended up having to use my Fiskars fingertip knife and ended up trimming a lot of the pieces out, but it's really pretty. I love the way it finished look came out. This navy blue on here, this is some of that Michaels cardstock. I ended up printing it out on my laser printer with snowflakes all over it and then foiled them. And I did the same thing on that light blue there. I just felt like I needed something with a little bit more, a darker color, some more contrast. So now that oval I don't mind so much. It looks, doesn't stand out. Maybe it's the white background I didn't like. But this oval's got the other background behind it, so I felt like it ended up looking a lot better. Now this one is the pearl paper again. You can see how shimmery it is. It's beautiful cardstock. Most of it was just plain cardstock, but I had a few of those pearl ones already ready to go. Most of my bells going in the other direction, but I decided to try one that way. I like it better on this card though. For some reason it just looks more Mo Better. It looks Mo Better to me. So that is the cards. I need to finish up the last two. But thank you so much for sticking with me, and if you have any questions, let me know. I still need to add my stickers on the back, like I said, and then my sentiments to the inside. I will be using the stamp set that my friend Jan sent me, the Hope and Peace stamp set from Stampin' Up. And I think I've settled on the Tidings of Comfort and Joy for these cards. It looks really nice. So thanks for joining me. I really appreciate you sticking with me for this. Again, these are for the Angel Card Project as well as Cards for Soldiers. If you have any questions, though, just let me know. I'll be happy to answer them. And by the way, the final count now does have us up to 114 cards, so we are well ahead of schedule. So thank you all very much. Happy crafting.